You can try to please everybody and set yourself up for failure, or try to set realistic goals for yourself, including the boundaries, including breaking things down like we were talking about earlier, and try to keep yourself as well as your relationships as healthy and stable as possible
Mm.
as a result.
Welcome to Thriving with ADHD, a podcast where we'll share everyday practical tips to thrive in life as an adult with ADHD. This podcast is brought to you by Animo Sano Psychiatry, a behavioral health practice with a specialist ADHD clinic based in North Carolina. And this is your host, Nada Pupovac. Welcome to Thriving with ADHD, dear ADHD community. This month we have a timely topic: managing holiday stress with ADHD. Our guest speaker is Dr. Ronald Lee. Ronald is a board-certified psychiatrist and founder of Luminous Vitality Behavioral Health. As a virtual psychiatrist in Massachusetts, Dr. Lee provides comprehensive anxiety and depression treatment to adults across Boston and all Massachusetts area. Welcome to Thriving with ADHD, Ronald. We are very happy to have you with us. It's December, and we have a timely topic for this month. That's managing holiday stress with ADHD. Holidays could be challenging for everyone, but especially for people who have ADHD. They're dealing with emotions, relationships, difficult conversations and situations, and so on. So I hope that by the end of this conversation, our community that lives with ADHD will have better understanding on how to deal with certain situations during this festive season. So welcome once again, and we are so happy to have you with us.
Thank you very much for having me. It's mutual.
Yeah. Well, let's get started with the first question. So, what are some of the main reasons the holiday season can be particularly challenging for individuals with ADHD? And how do those challenges typically show up?
So, piggybacking off of what you were saying, I think I'll preface what I'm saying by starting off. What I have to say, I think applies to the entire population. It's just including the recommendations, observations, and so forth. I just think the volume or strenuousness of the advice gets turned way up because,
Mm,
as you were saying, these things do become more problematic or could hit the points of failure, as you might put them, in things or situations or people that might have a hard time struggling with
mhm.
ADHD, let alone the stresses caused by the holidays. So if you think about it, holidays are kind of like a perfect storm of confluence of factors that could make somebody with ADHD's day or holiday season completely go askew. The structure that usually helps people with ADHD, like regular sleep, work routines, structured planned scheduled days,
Mm,
they inherently get thrown out the window by the nature of holidays themselves.
yes,
So,
yes.
while the supply of these coping mechanisms, meaning like a schedule, like sleep and just having routines to fall on, while the supply of that goes down in the holiday season, the demands on people, including those with ADHD, go up. So it kind of creates
Mhm.
that a perfect storm I was speaking of before.
Mm,
Um, there's extra planning going on with holidays,
mm,
travel, financial decisions, potentially complicated family dynamics. I think we'll go into more detail
mhm.
down this discussion.
Yes.
That's a huge load on anyone's higher executive function, but it could especially make somebody with ADHD kind of go a tad more haywire. And on top of that, there's also extraneous sensory stimuli, including but not limited to the noise of the holidays, crowds, bright lights, and parents with young children would know that when they're off of school, they're on at home. So that's an additional stressor right there. So it's just a lot of sensory and social stimulation all at once. So people in general, like I was saying, but especially more so ADHD individuals, more prone and vulnerable. They might feel more scattered, emotionally dysregulated, and tired,
Mm.
um, than they typically would. That's not a character flaw or defect. It's essentially the environment cranking up the difficulty level on an already demanding mind, because that's how I see ADHD minds.
Yes.
It's more
Yes.
demanding. Um,
Exactly. Exactly. So, um, I think this is a perfect introduction to my next question. So, there's laws going on, and demands are high for to anyone, but especially to people with ADHD who struggle with executive functions. So, um, with this overwhelm and just everything getting so busy during this holiday season, what are some practical strategies or tools that you can recommend for folks with ADHD to try to stay organized even among all this chaos and everything going on? Is there something they can do to help themselves?
there's actually a number of things they could do.
Mm-hmm.
And again, everyone could probably take a page out of this, myself
Exactly.
included.
Okay.
But especially people with ADHD. If you want to put into a cliche type of statement, platitude or whatnot, don't try to keep the holidays in your head. Like, don't try to, do it all.
Mm,
Use a simple, concrete visual system like a calendar on the wall. I myself use a shared digital calendar, Google Calendar
mhm,
specifically, so that,
mhm,
with my family members, we can kind of enter in important things for us to kind of not lose in the family dynamic. We will again
mhm,
speak on more later, but uh, keep the key critical events on said calendars or schedule in a way that's accessible and digestible.
mhm,
And along that vein, break these tasks, appointments, things to do into digestible chunks or steps to reduce the inherent overload you might otherwise feel having to deal with them. You can, for example, don't say like, okay, Tuesday will be my do the gifts day. You might want to break that down into separate chunks. For example, on Tuesday, I will start to make a list. And if I have time, I will order 3 gifts that day. 3 gifts on Wednesday, 3 gifts on Thursday. That way you can't get lost in what I'll frequently call a condition or byproduct of ADHD is paralysis by analysis. They just
mm,
get overwhelmed and essentially end up doing nothing. But instead,
mm,
that's because they're looking at a very daunting, humongous task. They haven't really given themselves the grace or viability of breaking down into more digestible chunks. So I would suggest taking those lists and making them kind of structured, broken down, and organized in a way that any of us could probably benefit from
mhm,
having that as a guide to.
mhm,
I would also probably recommend that you schedule time off in the calendar. Meaning in said calendar, you could give yourself periods of 30 minutes to an hour that are dedicated just to relaxing. Like, don't do, no work, no personal, just me time, myself time
mm,
for wellness. That can work evidence because people with ADHD are also kind of prone to burning themselves out because they're kind of left to their own devices. And after 3 to 5 hours, they got nothing because they gave themselves no break in between. So having
mm,
that half hour to an hour could be very helpful in my opinion, regarding the management of symptoms, particularly around this difficult time or more challenging time rather.
mhm,
And also give yourself a break and take shortcuts when you need to. You don't have to like make an entire uh, grandiose cake because the family's coming over. You can buy the cake in the store. Like, there are trade-offs and shortcuts, so people are tempted to like do everything so perfect and, make
yes.
things from scratch. It really doesn't have to be that way, and you kind of, you can also do a potluck where if people bring things in and not one person feels the weight of the world having to cook the entire dinner from them. So, people always have this romanticized version, in my opinion and experience, of
Mhm,
creating the perfect holiday, and
mm.
there's something to be said about the whole aim for the moon, maybe you'll hit a star mentality. but it's also that can backfire
Mm.
if you put those expectations on, and then you're not just setting yourself up for disappointment, you're setting yourself for failure because you might end up getting nothing done instead of like, 75% of perfection is still like 75%
Okay.
perfect.
Yeah.
So, um, I don't know if I fully answered your question. I thought I had
Yeah,
some
yeah.
solution of my own. Okay.
Excellent. Excellent. So, yeah, I also find from my personal experience when you are looking at things as a whole, they might be overwhelming, but once you start chunking them down and
Yeah.
making them bite-sized and then solving one thing after another, then it doesn't seem so daunting. And I really like the idea of having a little break. And if you don't mind, what would you recommend? What people could do in this 30-minute or an hour to just wind down, to just relax?
You can do whatever essentially will relax you. I mean, wouldn't recommend doom scrolling on your phone because I just find that to be a not doesn't typically end well. But I realize
Doom
people
scrolling.
an hour, they're
Yeah,
gonna
yeah,
go do their,
yeah.
Instagram, TikTok,
Yes,
whatever the young kids are doing
yes.
nowadays. But what would probably be more helpful is something along the lines of maybe taking a brisk walk or maybe
Mm,
doing
mm,
something around the house that you don't mind doing. So essentially, whatever is going to take your mind off the task you might otherwise get kind of hyper focused and burned
mm-hmm,
out on. And
mm-hmm.
number two, something that you kind of enjoy to bring the stress level down, because that's kind of the entire point, bringing the stress
All
level.
right. Thank you so much.
Of
Beautiful.
course.
Now, we touched on family dynamics and relationships, so I would like to talk more about that. So, hopefully, many people have happy families and good relationships, but that's not always the case. So, holidays often bring expectations with family dynamics and just social expectations in general. So, how can someone with ADHD set healthy boundaries and communicate their needs without feeling guilty or as isolated?
So when you think about it, boundaries are just kind of like a way of protecting your energy so you can be present
Mm,
with the people you care about when it matters. And it's kind of like that saying, those who mind don't matter and those who matter don't mind. So for someone with ADHD, that could start with deciding like what your limits are before you start addressing a bunch of invitations that may or may not have started piling up.
mm,
How many events can you manage in a certain week? How long can you realistically say? Then I would probably recommend creating a short, simple script in your head, like if your listeners don't get the visual, so I'm air quoting here, but
mm-hmm,
um, uh, I'd love to, but I can't commit to that this year, end quote.
mm-hmm,
Or, quote,
mm-hmm,
I may need to leave a bit early, but I'm
mm,
really glad to come, end quote. And so if you just, like we were saying before, normalize taking breaks, just to give yourself even not a half hour breather, but if you are feeling overwhelmed at a family dinner, because Uncle Bob is getting rowdy, then you could also have a little mini script of like, quote, if you see me step outside, I am just recharging, end quote.
mm,
So,
mm-hmm,
and harkening back to the earlier part of your question, some guilt might show up. In my experience, and I do believe literature currently supports this, ADHD people are predominantly people of the people pleasing character frequently,
mm, mm-hmm,
as often
mm-hmm,
as not. So it's entirely possible you'll feel guilt. But
mm,
as long as you realize that um, it's normal when we're kind of setting that boundary and that you can't please everybody and you've kind of processed and come to terms with that, it doesn't mean you're wrong or a bad person. You could kind of look at it that you're maybe accepting short-term hits of guilt for long-term healthier relationships with the people that
mm,
actually matter in your life. And
mm,
you can try to please everybody and set yourself
mm,
up for failure, or try to set realistic goals for yourself, including the boundaries, including breaking things down like we were talking about earlier, and try to keep yourself as well as your relationships as healthy and stable as possible
Mm.
as a result.
Mm. To continue to that conversation about family dynamics, so family gatherings can bring strong emotions, especially for people with ADHD who may experience rejection, sensitivity, and emotional dysregulation. So, what would be your advice for folks with ADHD to navigate these difficult moments more effectively?
So I'll circle back to one of my earlier answers of the whole cliche of
Hmm.
those who mind don't matter and those who matter don't mind. So,
Mm.
since many adults, like you were saying, are particularly sensitive to the possibility of rejection or letting others down, which is along this topic of setting healthy and appropriate boundaries and
Mm.
difficulties with that, we can tie all of that together by noting that most mental health experts emphasize that true friends and loving family will understand your limits. That's the whole those who mind don't matter, vice versa. And if you establish clear boundaries ahead of time, I'll throw another cliche at you. They say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So if you kind of give them the heads up ahead of time so that they're warned and they're not thinking like, oh, uh-oh, well, what's wrong with Bobby? Why is he like, more this than that? And it can be the people again that you trust, that you're close with, because the fact is nobody has the perfect family. If you show me
Mm.
somebody that has the perfect family, I'm sure I have a number of bridges to sell you, but there is always going to
Hmm.
be that type
Hmm.
of dynamic, and ranging from unhealthy to flat out toxic. So
Yes.
again, like emphasizing the ones that matter to oneself, and kind of making sure that they, above all else, understand. Anything else, gossipy and Mildred can, who cares? Like,
Mm.
if you see
Mm.
her every once or twice a year and everyone knows she's uh, just gonna make a mountain out of a molehill, like she's not who matters. Like, and it's kind of just a matter and it's also easier said than done from where I sit to say
Hmm.
than for somebody maybe listening, sitting to hear, and take to heart. But I do think that if they are able to give the members of the family that again are kind of more in the know and kind of in that circle of trust, and forget about gossipy Aunt Mildred or Gilda or whoever it might be. They
Yes.
could kind of reduce the have a higher yield of reducing significant family conflicts. Will there always be small squabbles, arguments, and that sort of stuff, especially with some family events, maybe having like alcohol free flowing? I'm sure that'll lead
Yes.
to way
Yes.
more drama. So I would say just kind of focusing in on who and what matters, and
Mm.
kind of not letting the white noise outside, which again is especially more challenging to people with ADHD. But
Mm.
if they prepare themselves ahead of time mentally, nothing's going to be perfect, but it could be far less disastrous along the lines of that whole rejection boundary issue we've been discussing. Does that
That's
make sense?
Yes, yes, absolutely, 100%. And I think it's applicable to anyone. I think we all, as you said,
100%.
there is no perfect family. There is no perfect family.
None
And
whatsoever.
yeah, and I think we will all deal with some family members that maybe we like less than the others, but
Of
I,
course. You get
yeah,
you have
but
to you
those,
have to love
yeah,
them. You don't have to like them.
yeah,
That's the way families
absolutely.
work.
But hopefully you have that one trusted person and that person is all that matters. And focusing on this person 100% matters the most. And you can kind of uh, deal with everyone else and try not to take whatever others say to heart.
People with ADHD frequently have strong, like as you were saying, strong sensitivity to rejection or criticism.
Mm-hmm.
Family gatherings can be like an absolute gasoline to that potential fire. Um,
Mm,
like old roles, old comments, old jokes. These can all feel
mm,
very triggering. A helpful
exactly.
step is to like again, anticipate and plan ahead. Maybe have a
Mm,
little script in your head, like who tends to trigger you. Well, it's a little. I'm sure that a vast majority of the listeners would say parents. If you're
mm,
still fortunate to have them alive and around, the other side of that is they're going to be alive and around to potentially cause you a little bit of stress. Say
yes.
with your example of criticisms, that's
Yes.
not an uncommon phenomenon at all. So, planning ahead, having a game plan, that little script, just like, oh, let's change the subject, giving your permission to step out for air.
Mm,
If you notice physical sensations that are telling of your body, like tensing up, that could be a great time to give yourself that earlier scripted excuse of, if you don't mind, I think I need to step outside, make a phone call, or even just get a breath of fresh air, whatever you're
mm,
comfortable
mm-hmm,
saying in that moment. But I guess being mindful of if your heart starts pounding and you find yourself short of breath, it's probably a good sign that you want to like take a step back out and
exactly.
kind of like give yourself that moment to like, reset yourself and kind
Mm,
of
time
re-enter
out.
in. Yeah,
Exactly.
because I mean, what's the worst catastrophe? Like you really just don't want to have that disastrous family outing. Like I think this uh, 90+% of the listeners, the greatest fear is that it's going to be the holiday from hell or that disastrous one where,
Exactly.
this drama happens or a fist fight breaks out but if you can kind of stay ahead of it, an ounce of prevention being worth a pound of cure, and just step outside, you control the things, you worry about the things you can control. And as long as you're doing your part, I think that will largely and strongly mitigate some of the concerns of family dynamics,
Mm,
rejection, and such that we were talking about. If and you know what, we're also not perfect, myself included. If you
mhm,
make snap or off-colored response just because someone triggered you. I myself tend to dive towards the sarcastic comments that sometimes I'll come to regret. It's okay to own it and just say, "Hey, about that uh, thing I said earlier, I was overwhelmed. I'm sorry I snapped."
mhm,
So again, give yourself a break. None of us are going to be perfect. Nothing's going to go exactly as planned, and
mm,
being prepared for it and just kind of again hoping for the best while preparing for the worst is probably how I would handle that potentially difficult family
mm,
dynamic during holidays.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So actually, you gave a few tactics like stepping out and removing yourself from the situation, but
It's usually
also
best. Yeah.
yeah, but also if it happens, it could be that you're at the wrong. You can always own it and apologize and try to move on. And yeah, that's the best you can do. And just give yourself grace. And I think what you said about I think earlier about social gatherings and stuff like that. So you can give yourself a time limit, and if it gets uncomfortable, you can totally leave for good. You don't have to stay. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah,
so
100%.
yeah,
100%.
yeah, yeah.
I try not to be
Uh,
the first. I try not to be the first one to leave, but I don't want to be the last one to leave either. Usually, unless it's a rip roaring heck of a time, then that would be the exception.
All right. So thank you so much. These are really some great examples and tactics that I think people can try to use if they find themselves in those difficult situations. So I think that's a great advice, and I'll take it to my heart. So thank you so much. Yeah. So with all these family gatherings, friend gatherings, and social things, we are traveling. We our schedules are all messed up. So, what advice would you give to people to try to maintain stability in their sleep, in their exercise, in taking medication during the holiday season?
So, just continuing along the motif of like holidays are going to be inherently disruptive.
Mm,
I think this applies to all the topics we've talked about. May first start off by tempering your expectations and anticipating that,
mm,
because holidays are going to always shake up most people's schedules. So I try to advise people to think more in terms of anchors instead of perfection, if that makes sense. Like
Yes,
if you
100%.
use two or three things, again, this is along the lines of keep it simple.
Mm,
For me, sometimes say keep it simple, stupid, because it'll make me feel that way. But it's certainly just keep it simple in general is the best way to kind of approach it. If you take two or three things that matter to you and are the core of one's regimen or daily routine. Sleep, medication. You were saying before what, is an activity to do, some form of movement. Like all studies, it's almost unanimous
mm,
that some type of movement or exercise is beneficial. I have
mm.
this Apple Watch that is persistently annoying, yet means quite well that I have to stand
Mm-hmm.
up every few hours. So it's
Yes,
for a reason, right? It dings a
exactly.
little bit. So if you can take like three things, for example, sleep, medication, some form of movement or exercise, and try to make sure that you are regimented about those, that could be the foundation of a good keeping a routine in an inherently routine disruptive time, or it can literally be the entire thing. Like if that's what matters, then just focus on that. If you can do three, four, five things, great. But three things I think are permissibly well advised if you can stick with them, so as not to again overwhelm anyone.
Mm,
Um, but if you take your medications at the same time, and that's a lot easier with modern technology by just pressing
mm.
this on my phone saying set alarm for 3 p.m. That
Yes,
that could be a good way
exactly.
of doing that. And pack the medications in your carry-on if you're traveling. Bring a few extra days worth of medications if you travel under the ideology of it's better to have a bit much when you don't need it than to not have it when you do. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst, and you can rarely be disappointed. So protect sleep when you can. Um, like a basic wind down routine. There's a few apps for that, like there is for everything and
Mm-hmm.
almost anything we've spoken about here. A Calm app, I think, is on iOS and Android.
Mm-hmm.
Some people that get disturbed by light wear eye masks and white noise machines or earplugs to drown out noise, especially if maybe people are staying over and your house is a tad noisier than usual.
Mm.
And the whole aiming for movement. I will just bake that into the whole what do you do in those breaks that you give yourself. I'll double down and say, you know what, just go ahead and take a walk, unless something else is immensely more pleasurable to you. If you're a concert pianist and you'd rather play Beethoven's Ninth Symphony in that 30-minute period, sure, go ahead. But your heart and mind are probably going to thank you a little bit more if you take a couple laps around the block
Mm.
cardiovascularly for your sound body, sound mind. So they,
Mm.
they do go hand in hand, and I think that's definitely applicable in this case as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I would like to ask this one, how people can with ADHD can actually experience joy and actually relax and enjoy themselves rather than feeling overwhelmed that they have to perform, they have to put on the act. Is there a way, is it possible for people with ADHD to actually enjoy the holiday season?
Of course,
Yeah,
that that
let's talk about that.
absolutely indubitably. I think a big shift is probably just again about tempering expectations. Just let go of the idea of any like perfect holiday,
Mm,
just like there is any myth of a quote perfect family. There is no such thing.
mm,
Um, once you let go of that and you realize that things are gonna go wrong and not everything is gonna go exactly as planned, just try to, I guess, focus and hone in on like what is gonna be important to me to have a good holiday, what's gonna be meaningful to me,
mm,
and try to whether it's a spiritual or cultural tradition. For others, it's just having the time to relax, period, because so many of us are so busy that life
exactly.
itself is overwhelming. Or just quality time with a few select people. If you choose two or three things that really matter, um, those examples or whatever one can think of that's important to them, give yourself permission to streamline and simplify the rest. Um, Engage in fewer events. You can make or prepare simpler or order takeout, simpler meals, less costly meals, put less pressure on yourself or everyone around you to make anything like quote Instagram worthy. People are going to remember how they felt with you. They're not going to really, uh, remember your magazine spread unless it goes viral on Instagram. And that's statistically unlikely to happen.
Yeah.
So, when you have a good moment, just laughing with a cousin or an uncle, watching a movie with your child or family, parents, what's the expression? Stop and smell the roses and just try to
Be in the
savor the
moment.
moment. Yeah, because that is ultimately what will make or break a holiday, I think, are those
Mm,
moments. So I think those types of moments that we frequently take for granted can be where the joy you were referencing earlier can
mm.
really kind of originate from and hopefully blossom. Um,
Exactly. Exactly. So thank you so much.
of course.
So can we learn, Ronald, can we learn more about you and about your practice? You own Luminous Vitality Behavioral Health, but you also have some other work going on. So tell us more and how
So,
people can connect with you. Yeah.
yes. So I founded Luminous Vitality Behavioral Health about 4 years ago during the height of the COVID
Mm,
pandemic, and I
mm,
think if anything, the pandemic showed that um, there is there, telehealth isn't for everyone because my practice is exclusively virtual for the
mm,
time being. And it's not for everybody. It's not for, people with, if somebody told me they had florid psychosis with schizophrenia that,
mm-hmm,
recurred with a history of violence, I would probably say, I'm sorry, that does not sound like a great fit for
mm-hmm,
telehealth. But generally, people that are higher functioning, it creates, I think what COVID showed us is that certain needs could be very well filled with the use of virtual or telehealth. Specifically, for example, busy moms that are essentially professional chauffeurs. Don't ask me how I know, but I know that's what
mm-hmm,
a lot of
mm-hmm,
domestic engineers at their homes end up doing is driving a lot, and so making specific appointments. 30 minutes to an hour in the Boston area, because everything is 30 minutes to an hour from there,
mm-hmm,
can be very difficult. So I think that my virtual practice kind of caters to that good portion of them. I'm
mm-hmm,
glad I stumbled into the topic of this podcast, because I did not anticipate that maybe a quarter to a third of my patients are ADD, ADHD. But I'm a general adult psychiatrist, so I kind of
mm,
handle it all: depression, anxiety, OCD, a lot of which are also comorbid with
mm-hmm.
ADHD. But I think
Exactly.
for higher functioning adults that just require that logistical um, assistance in being able to make an appointment
Mm-hmm.
from their laptop or their iPad or
Mm-hmm.
their phone in a pinch. I prefer if, people are kind of at their computers at home like I am, so that it's as close to the real thing as possible. And it
Yes.
also affords a degree of, it's strange to say, but being in a room with a stranger and spilling your guts can be cathartic at the same time, a little bit like
Intimidating?
anxiety provoking.
Yeah.
So it kind of creates the intimacy with the safety barrier in that
Mm.
regard. So I have started and kept this modestly small virtual practice for the last few years, and I know that a large portion of the listeners out there will be ADHD diagnosed with that condition or
Mm-hmm.
suspect that they are. Um, I truthfully try to, because that is by far my most frequent requests. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes things can go sideways with the medications. I usually just have somebody with a prior diagnosis or a neuropsych
Mm.
eval just to really, really nail it down. And I think that is generally considered good practice, especially
Mm-hmm.
if one is operating under telehealth, and that there are certain exemptions that are still in the works. And I think we are waiting till the end of this month to see if the Ryan Haight exemptions that were
Mm.
extended all throughout COVID would stay in
Yes.
place.
How people can get in touch with you?
If they Google Ronald Lee, MD, psychiatrist, Massachusetts, because I
Mm-hmm.
think there might be two or three Ronald. Lees
Mm-hmm.
throughout the country, but Massachusetts specifically.
Mm-hmm.
My website is also Luminous Vitality BH, B as in behavioral, H as in
Mm-hmm.
health.com. Just because Luminous Vitality Behavioral Health.com sounded way, way, way too long for a
Too
URL.
long. Okay.
So,
Okay.
and LVBH was taken. So, they could find me on that. I have a Google business profile,
Mm-hmm.
that should also show up if they Google my name. And, they can reach out directly to the website. And my direct email address is also at the bottom of that website. So they can reach me in any one of a number of ways. Calling the office, leaving a voicemail, if so, and sending me a direct message to the website or email would be probably be the best ways to get a hold of me. But thank you so
Uh,
much for having me on this
no,
show.
just before we wrap up, we like all our guest speakers, we would like to ask them if there is one takeaway from everything we talked about, what that would be.
I think a lot of the listeners and a lot of people just in those dark, not best spots in their lives might feel a lot more alone than they are, and
Mm,
just kind of the realization and belief that no, you're actually not alone, and no, this is probably happening to a whole lot more people than yourself. So that mental ability to remove that of isolation would probably be the first thing I would advise, because that can be an incredibly disheartening feeling or discouraging feeling to
exactly.
think that you're suffering through this alone, but you're definitely not alone. And then I will somewhat parody what I was going to say, that you had already hearkened to, about kind of giving yourself grace, giving yourself
Mm,
break, and kind of tempering expectations. It's not going to be the perfect holiday, but that's not really you what you are aiming for. You're aiming
mm,
for a joyous holiday, and the joyous holiday is, like we were saying, going to be found from those smaller moments,
mm,
speaking with a family member, or maybe having a good laugh over something that's completely nonsense, or makes no sense to anyone else, but it can really, really create a fond memory, because I think
yeah.
creating those types of memories is also a tremendous component of what a successful holiday can entail.
Excellent. Thank you, Ronald, so much. It was
Anytime.
useful. It was useful to anyone, honestly, and not just to folks with ADHD, but hopefully and especially to those living with ADHD. You get a good few tools and tactics and ideas how you can manage all those tricky situations with planning, with gifts, with family, just the whole holiday season and craziness that's going on around us. So thank you once again. It's been
Thank you for
a
having me.
pleasure, and we hope to have you again. Some to talk about other topics you're well knowledgeable. So we hope to have you again.
I hope so too. Happy holidays, everyone, to all the listeners out there too.
Happy holidays. Thank you for listening to Thriving with ADHD. This show is produced by Animal Sano Psychiatry. Please follow, rate, or share our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other streaming app of your choice. Music is by Daddy's Music from Pixabay. For more information about Animal Sano Psychiatry, please visit animalsanopsychiatry.com.